Hi and welcome to the very first BioStock Investor Meeting of 2023. Today we're proud to bring you both interesting company presentations and valuable expert insights. So stay tuned for an exciting day as we kick off today's event. Enjoy.
And for our first presentation, I am very happy to welcome Abliva CEO Ellen Donnelly to our studio in Lund, all the way from Boston nonetheless. Welcome, Ellen.
Thanks, Cecilia. And thanks for the opportunity to present Abliva. Imagine you're a new parent. You had a son 18 months ago and he's developing like all boys. And suddenly he gets a cold. And the cold lasts a little bit longer than colds normally do. And so you call to see your pediatrician. The pediatrician runs your son through a battery of tests and sends some blood for genetic testing. And a week later, he calls you with some unfortunate news. Your son's been diagnosed with Leigh syndrome. It's a rare disease that you've probably never heard of, so he continues. Unfortunately, this is a muscle disorder, and your son will start losing his muscle function. His development milestones that he's hit, he will soon regress. He may have uncontrollable sobbing, vomiting. He may start to develop seizures. And it's unlikely he'll live past the age of 10. The physician continues that unfortunately there are no approved therapies for this drug. And he'll put you in touch with some patient advocacy groups so you can meet other patients suffering. At Abliva, we're focused on developing medicines for patients suffering from Leigh syndrome and other primary mitochondrial diseases. Abliva is focused on becoming a global leader in mitochondrial medicine. And to do that, we are focused on becoming a leader in mitochondrial medicine. We can do that because we've been building the foundation to enable that goal. The first thing is we have an experienced team that's been working in mitochondrial medicine for over 2 decades. That's a long time in this area because we haven't known much about mitochondria, and the biology is just starting to evolve. Our CSO and founder, Eskil Elmer, and our CMO, Magnus Hansen, have both been focused on this for most of their career. Eskil runs a research lab that you can see at the bottom at Lund University, and Magnus is responsible for our development team at Medicon Village. We have full R&D capabilities, so we have a full lab and a development organization, and we also have the opportunity to build a commercial organization that will sell and market our drug if it gets approved. Something that also is unique about our company is we have a portfolio of assets focused on primary mitochondrial diseases. Our lead asset is KL1333. That started a pivotal study last year. Pivotal means that could be the one study we need to run in order to get the drug to the market. NV354, our second program, is ready to start phase 1, its first clinical study. Our company is publicly traded on NASDAQ Sweden, and in June of 2022, we raised 24 months of financing, 200 million, that will take the company for 2 more years and allow us to read out our interim analysis for our lead asset. So you may ask me, what are these mitochondria you're talking about? So mitochondria are really important because they're in every cell in your body and they're responsible for generating the energy your cells need to do their job. The number of mitochondria that you have in each cell is dependent upon how much energy that cell needs. So cells that need a lot of energy, like your muscle cells or your brain, they'll have many mitochondria. Another interesting thing about your mitochondria is that DNA comes from your mom. And mitochondrial DNA is a bit hard to fix. The proofreading mechanisms aren't the same as they are in your nuclear DNA. And so often if a mutation occurs, it won't get fixed. And so we'll see diseases caused from these mutations in the mitochondrial DNA. These diseases are called primary mitochondrial diseases. The best way to learn about them is to go onto our website. We have a couple of videos there of patients, and you can hear more from the patients about their diseases. But these are rare diseases. They affect about 1 in 5,000 individuals, so you may not have met anyone that suffers from a primary mitochondrial disease. Like I told you with the little boy, these are devastating, debilitating disorders. They do range in severity. So some people live a normal length life with reduced quality of life, and others, like the children that get the disease, often perish quite early. There are no approved therapies for the systemic disease. These patients are told they suffer from a primary mitochondrial disease, and the only thing they can do is treat the symptoms. As I mentioned earlier, the organs that require the most energy are those that are usually impacted. Here you can see our portfolio of programs at Abliva. We have a portfolio of first-in-class therapies that target these diseases. Our lead asset, KL1333, is focused on treating adults that suffer from fatigue and muscle myopathy or muscle weakness. That study just started in December of last year, and we call it the Falcon study, and I'll tell you more about that drug and that study in a few slides. The second program we have is NV354. That was developed by our research lab, and our scientists came up with the NV354 concept, and it's ready to go into the clinic as well. We also have a number of other early programs that we won't talk about today. So I mentioned mitochondrial disease, and often people haven't heard of it. And I think that's because everything has really evolved in the last couple of years. So we have a better understanding of the mitochondria and the science behind them so that we can develop therapeutics to treat those dysfunctional mitochondria. We also have a number of regulatory tools that are available to us that shorten our time to market and decrease our costs. Examples of these are orphan drug designation, which we have with our first compound, KL1333. This allows us repeated conversations with the regulatory authorities and one pivotal study before it can go for approval. We have things like fast track designation, pediatric rare disease voucher, and breakthrough therapy are all tools that we as a company can use in order to progress our assets and get them to patients more quickly. The other thing that's developing is we've got organized patients and organized centers of excellence. And so in each country, we have about 2 centers of excellence focused on mitochondrial disease. In the States, it's about the same, about 2 per state. And these centers see the patients that exist in that country that suffer from the disease. And so that's nice because the patients are all coming into one point of care. These patients are kept track of in databases, which help both our clinical studies recruit the patients, and then they make it easier for us to sell our drugs. We also have support from a number of patient advocacy groups. And unlike in some other rare diseases where there are many, many, many of them, in this area, they've concentrated their efforts. And so in the US, we have a few very well-known and well-established patient advocacy groups. They help us recruit our patients, get the word out about our studies. And then obviously, if there's a therapy that it gets approved, they'll help with that as well. And we also have a strong internal position with our portfolio. We have first-in-class assets. As I mentioned, they're the first ever with this mechanism. We're in line with the competition in both areas, and we have a strong patent estate that protects our assets once they get to market. So all of this, the decreased risk, decreased time to market, and decreased costs really lead to a very substantial commercial opportunity. And I show here a market assessment that we did. And this is really a back of the envelope to try to see what do you need to believe to hit $1 billion in peak sales. And it's very, very feasible. So you have to assume that 50% of the patients get diagnosed, 50% of those get treated. And in this assumption, I've assumed that we're second to market after someone else. I've assumed a low price point of about $160,000 per year. And you can see peak sales here hit $1 billion. So a really nice place to be working as far as the commercial opportunity. So our first asset is KL1333. As I mentioned, this is being developed for adults that suffer from fatigue and muscle weakness. So when a patient comes to the clinic and says, I'm interested in being in this study, the first question is, what level of fatigue do you have and what level of muscle weakness? And the reason we chose these things is because they map to our mechanism of action, but they're also seen to be the most prevalent symptoms in this patient population. KL1333 modulates 2 enzymes that are involved in the mitochondria. They need to be at the right level. And so what KL1333 does is bring them back into the correct levels. We've run a number of studies. We've actually dosed over 100 patients and healthy volunteers with our drug and have a very good understanding of the safety profile. We also have signals of efficacy with this drug in patients, which I'll show you in a couple of slides. That was very important for us to understand the dose that we need to use of the drug and whether it would be efficacious in fatigue and myopathy. As I mentioned, we started our study later last year, and we have limited competitors in this space. Again, there's a large commercial opportunity. So here you can see some of the data that came from our phase 1b study. You can see the two endpoints that we're actually looking at in this ongoing study are represented here by two different scales. We have the fatigue scale, which you can see on the left. This is looking at a reduction of fatigue, so it's good to go down. And you can see the patients treated with our drug KL1333 are the black bar, and the patients that were given placebo are the gray bar. Patients didn't know which drug they were being given, and they both looked the same. So the site doesn't know either do we. That's called a blinded study. So you can see in this panel that the black group and the gray group performed very differently. There's a large separation, and that separation is actually big enough to be clinically meaningful. And so what I mean when I say that is it's likely that these patients knew that they felt better from our drug. That's clinically meaningful. I feel a difference in my symptoms. The second panel that you can see on the right is an improvement in muscle function. And this is a test called the 30-second sit-to-stand, where you sit down and stand up as many times as you can within 30 seconds. Again, you can see a difference in these two groups. The patients that had our drug did better in this test. So that was also pretty interesting to us. That shows us that the muscle function is important, and KL1333 may address that. We have some other data from this study. We showed an exposure-effect relationship, and what that means is patients got more drug, they did better. So we know that in this next study, we might want to give them a little bit more drug. We also showed target engagement, and the reason that's important is because that shows you that it's our drug that's doing what we think it's doing. It's not some random effect. So the nice thing about this program, and one of the benefits of working in the orphan space or the rare disease space, is that we can move quite quickly. So you see that our study started last year. We're looking forward to an interim analysis in the middle of next year, and the drug could be on the market, if everything goes well, by 2026. That's a pretty remarkable timeline to the market and to our patients who need this drug. The study, a few highlights. It's adult patients with systemic disorder. We're going to recruit 40 patients to an interim analysis, and in the end of the study, we'll have 120 to 180 patients total. They're going to receive medicine twice a day, and they're going to get it for 12 months. We're looking at their fatigue and their muscle weakness. These patients have a hard time coming into the clinic, as you can imagine, and they're often unable to get up. They might have a hard time taking a shower because it just takes too much energy. So most of this year-long study will be done at home, with nurses coming in and helping the patients through the assessments. And that makes it a lot easier for both the patients to participate in our study and for us to get the study run quickly. Our second asset is NV354. This one's exciting because it came from the scientists in our lab. They designed that. This is a prodrug of succinate, which means we're using a technology to get the succinate into the cells. It has the ability to be disease modifying, and this one will treat the son that I told you about earlier. It has great properties. It's orally bioavailable, it's brain penetrant, and now we believe it's clinic ready. You can see some of the data here that we looked at to show that the drug will be impactful on mitochondria, impactful in Lee patients. The middle shows you the high brain penetration that we see. You can see that it largely penetrates the brain. And then in the last panel, you can see the improvement in motor activity and weight in a model that's very relevant to this disease population. We have a great team here at Abliva, excited to get this drug into our patients. I think we all have a wealth of experience in drug development and mitochondrial medicine. You can see Aqilion, our CSO, and Magnus. CFO is Katarina Johansson, and then Dag Ness just joined us as our head of clinical operations to ensure that we get this study run on time. We're also supported by a strong board and scientific advisory board. This is really important because we can't do it all alone. We talk to our scientific advisory board multiple times a week, a month, and they really are our partners in this study. These are all experienced people in mitochondrial disease. Many of them see patients as well as do research, and we've established a great relationship with them. The board you can see on the left, a great group of advisors that are really very impactful in the company's progression. We've been very busy. We're a small team, but I think we work hard. In December, we were pleased to have initiation of coverage by Kempen. In December, we also started our phase 2 global pivotal study. In January, we recruited Dag to help ensure that that study goes well. And in February, we got the great news that our US patent has been granted for our second compound, NV354. We also announced the incoming chairman, Edwin Moses, who was confirmed in an EGM as a director of the board. And in March, we've started screening our patients. So we're now starting to screen patients in the Falcon study. So it's been an exciting couple of months. As I mentioned, we're focused on becoming a leader in global mitochondrial medicine. We're going to do that with our experienced team, our locations in Lund in Sweden, our full research and development capabilities, and our exciting portfolio full of assets. So I encourage you to continue with us on this journey, and I look forward to the next opportunity to update you on our progress. Thank you.
So Ellen, like you mentioned here, this is a horrible disease for the patients and for their families. And I know that you have a lot of contact with patient organizations. What have you learned from them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the patients are why we're all here. So we spend a lot of time talking to the patients, both to understand their disease, and then that allows us to better plan our clinical studies and the endpoints that we're going to look at. And so in our discussions with patients, it's been very interesting because the patients, the adult patients in our current study, they might suffer from seizures, strokes, they might be deaf. But when you talk to them, the thing that bothers them the most about their disease is their fatigue and their muscle weakness, because it impacts everything that they do during the day. They're always thinking, as you know, when you wake up tired, you're always thinking about how you just wish you had a bit more energy. And so because of our mechanism of action, we could actually design a study that looks at energy in the form of fatigue and muscle weakness. So that was really helpful. And then obviously with the children, with the second asset, targeting the young babies, it's just devastating to hear what these parents are going through. They often have to stop working and are the sole caregivers of those children. And they know there's nothing that's going to make their child better. So it's just a matter of time. It's just keeping every day to be as impactful as they possibly can and seizing the opportunity to be with that child for one more day. So the patients really are why we're here. We're all driven to get these medicines out to these patients and help them feel better.
And that's, of course, what the aim of this ongoing study with your lead candidate is. But with primary mitochondrial diseases being so rare, how difficult is it to fully recruit a study like yours?
Yeah, it's a great question. It could be very difficult. So we have a lot of sites that we're activating in order to find these important patients. One of the things that helps us in primary mitochondrial diseases is these mitochondrial centers of excellence. So there are a couple in each country, and they see the patients that we need to get into our study. And so we're hoping with the partnership with those sites that we will be able to recruit this study, but it is always difficult. And as you know, if you're a patient suffering from a disease, it's hard to do a clinical study. It's a lot of work, and we have a 12-month study that we're looking to recruit. So we don't know. We won't know until we start recruiting our patients.
Looking at the other end of the study, when you do get the data, what data do you need for it to be deemed pivotal?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really up to the discussion with the regulators. When we take the data to them, we'll take the full data set. We'll have our two primary endpoints, fatigue and myopathy. Hopefully one of them is statistically significant. Then we'll have our secondary endpoints and our exploratory endpoints. And the regulators, they really look at that whole package. They see this incredible unmet need. I mean, these boys are dying, boys and girls and adults dying from this disease, and they have no approved therapies. And so they look at that whole picture and say, okay, is this drug going to be efficacious and safe, and should we get it approved? And that's the decision that they make.
And let's say that it is deemed pivotal, you get it approved. What happens then? Do you take it to market on your own, or do you look for a partner?
Yes, both are options. I think our current plan is to market it ourselves in the U.S. It's a fairly simple thing to do in a rare disease because you have these centers of excellence and you know where to target your sales. And then we would probably partner in Europe just because that is a more complex environment with the different regulatory structures in each country.
Well, I hope to have you back in Lund soon to talk more about Abliva.
Thank you. Thanks, Cecilia.
And thank you for coming.
The next speaker is Martin Åmark, CEO at Xbrane Biopharma.
So I'm going to present Xbrane Biopharma, and we are engaged in development of so-called biosimilars. So that is follow-on products to already approved biologics, which we can launch post-patent expiry of the originator products. We are fulfilling a strong purpose. We are increasing the accessibility, really, of biological drugs with the introduction of biosimilars and realizing huge savings for the healthcare systems, which could be directed to other needs. Our core competence is really to take biosimilars all the way from cell line development to approval. And the way we differentiate ourselves towards our competitors is to apply our platform technology, which gives us lower production cost. That's the key. Exciting times for the company. We are launching together with STADA our first biosimilar this month in Europe, Ximluci. We'll talk more about that. We have a target to generate 1 billion Swedish crowns in annual income 3 years post-launch, as we have great commercial expectations on this product. This shall also bring us to cash flow positive stage of the company during the course of 2024. And we have set up the company with close to 100 employees and laboratory development facility in Solna, so that we can start one new development program annually and expand our portfolio of currently 5 biosimilar candidates. So that's our midterm focus. I'll start by going through a little bit more about the biosimilar market, then about Xbrane as a company. We're going to come to Ximluci, the product which is launched these days, and then our portfolio of further 4 biosimilar candidates. So biosimilars are then follow-on products to biological drugs. Biological drugs contains a protein as an active substance, and this needs to be produced via so-called recombinant DNA technology. And the molecules are so complex in their structure that you cannot prove that you have an identical product originator. You have to therefore demonstrate as high similarity as possible, and therefore the concept of a biosimilar. Development of biosimilars is faster and more cost-effective and contains lower risk than development of novel drugs. Typically, we need to spend about 100 million euro throughout the development program. It takes us 7 years, but the risk when we go into the clinic is very low. 95% of all the biosimilars that have gone into a phase 3 trial have ended up on the other end with a regulatory approval. And when the products come to market, what we've seen is that they take absolute majority of the originator product sales. 75% volume market share 3 years after launch has been kind of the historic experience. Of course, then at the lower price point, we are counting on, roughly speaking, a 50% price discount versus originator when we think about our first products. And this is a market which is growing very quickly, 17% annual growth per year expected to 2030. And that is, of course, due to patent expiries on many blockbuster biological drugs, and also due to the strongly increasing penetration or market share the biosimilars take versus the originator. So an attractive market we are addressing. We have our competitive edge in our platform technology. And that consists of, on the one hand, a library of proprietary host cells, which we use to express or produce the target protein. We have technologies for how to genetically modify these host cells to express the protein we're interested in an as productive way as possible. And we have many different tools and methods we use in the process development. This is a fermentation process where the host cells, the genetically modified host cells, with the addition of oxygen and nutrients, are expressing the protein they're then genetically modified to express. And we have techniques how to do that to get to the highest possible productivity, which leads to lowest production cost. We have 10 approved patents and 24 pending, so a growing IP portfolio around our technology. And 5 products in our portfolio addressing a market of 53 billion euro if we think about the combined sales of the respective originated products. And our strategy is to license out the rights to our products to commercialization partners at the preclinical stage. We've done that successfully with our first 2 products. We have partnerships with STADA, Bausch + Lomb, and Biogen around these products. And we have 100 million euro of upcoming milestones up until regulatory approval in Europe and the US for these respective programs. And then there are royalties and/or profit sharings when the product comes to market. So I think strong partners for our first 2 products. And now Ximluci, which is a biosimilar to Lucentis, an eye drug used in treatment of several severe eye diseases leading to deteriorating vision and worst case blindness. Great market to come with the biosimilar too. There is an issue with high drug prices leading to limited accessibility. Even in Europe and the US, our assessments are that 50% of the affected individuals still goes untreated due to high pharmaceutical costs. That is something we're going to change now with introducing Ximluci as a biosimilar at a significant price discount versus the originator. We have approval in Europe, and we have produced and released the launch material. And STADA, our commercialization partner in Europe, are, as we speak, launching the product and getting the first sales in the first countries. Meanwhile, we are in the process of resubmitting the BLA to FDA, and we are expecting to get an approval of Ximluci in the US first quarter of next year, and then allowing our US partner, Bausch + Lomb, to launch the product over there. Meanwhile, we're also doing things to maximize the value of this product to the company. We are scaling up the production process in order to reduce the production cost, and we're also, apart from the vial, which is currently approved and being launched, developing a pre-filled syringe, which we can bring to the market for an even increased benefit for patients and retina clinics. All in all, a big market, close to 13 billion euro if we count in all the originated products in this class of drugs, mainly Lucentis and Eylea. But we do believe that biosimilars to Lucentis also will take market from mainly Eylea, which is similar from an efficacy and safety perspective, and also in real clinical setting used at a similar fashion with regards to frequency of injections. So huge market opportunity, really. 2 great partners in STADA and Bausch + Lomb, and good commercial terms, I do believe. With STADA, we are getting 50% of the profits generated from their sales across Europe. With Bausch + Lomb, it's a more traditional license deal where we get a portion of gross profits generated. But Europe now, which is very interesting as the product is being launched as we speak across Europe, 4 billion euro market opportunity. STADA spent a good part of last year to prepare for the launch. They have developed all the launch material. They've trained the sales reps. They are participating in the so important tenders to be awarded and be able to supply the drug in accordance to agreed upon prices with the payers. And they have experience with regards to launching and commercializing biosimilars across Europe with 5 biosimilars already on the market. So we're very comfortable in that STADA will do a great job in launching the product across Europe and generating a good first year of sales in 2023. And then looking beyond with our further portfolio, the second biosimilar candidate we have under development is targeting Cimzia. Cimzia is a so-called TNF inhibitor used in treatment of psoriasis and rheumatoid arthritis. 2 billion euro of sales, and our biosimilar candidate is the only one under development globally targeting Cimzia. And we do believe that still will hold true by the time of patent expiry. And that's, of course, very exciting since it's a fairly big drug of 2 billion euro. We have a partnership with Biogen. I think it's a good structure of this deal. We got an upfront payment of $8 million by signing. There are $80 million of milestone payments until approval, and then royalties on sales. And we are responsible under this partnership for the preclinical development, which we believe we are going to conclude during the course of this year with scale-up and production of clinical material. Then Biogen is going to take over the program and start and fund the clinical development. So we believe from Xbrane's perspective that this program will turn into profit during the course of next year. And then our oncology portfolio, which consists of biosimilar candidates to Opdivo, Keytruda, and Darzalex, expected to be huge products with close to 50 billion euro of combined annual sales by time of patent expiry. For the first biosimilar candidate here, the one to Opdivo, we have finalized process development in-house and demonstrate the analytical similarity. Next stage is now to sign a contract with a contract manufacturer and scale up and produce clinical material, something that we're going to initiate during the coming months. We also have ambitions to do an out-licensing deal with a commercialization partner with this portfolio during the course of this year. And I do believe this is feasible. We have a couple of exciting discussions ongoing, and these programs are getting to the stage which our Cimzia biosimilar candidate was at when we did a deal with Biogen. So we're very much looking forward to be able to get back to this and communicate around the potential deal around this portfolio during this year. So to summarize, we're targeting a very attractive market, a biosimilar market, probably one of the fastest growing segments in the pharmaceutical industry, and generating big values to society in terms of increasing accessibility to these biological drugs and also realize savings for the healthcare systems. We're basing our activity on a patented platform technology which gives us significantly lower production cost compared to competitors, and that has been a strong factor in us being able to strike these deals with established pharmaceutical companies such as STADA, Bausch, Lund, and Biogen. Exciting year for Xbrane this year as our first biosimilar is launched by our partner STADA in Europe, a 4 billion euro market opportunity. And we're getting towards a US approval and the launch during the course of next year. And then exciting times also with our portfolio, where we expect that our biosimilar candidate to Cimzia will turn into profit during the course of next year, as we've concluded the production of clinical material to our partner Biogen. Also that we do a deal with the licensing partner for our oncology portfolio during the course of this year. So that's to summarize and why I do believe that it's exciting times to come in as an investor in Xbrane during this year. Thank you.
And you said that your goal this year is to be cash flow positive. Could you elaborate a bit on how you work towards that goal?
Yeah, during next year we expect to hit that target. Yeah, to hit that target of being cash flow positive. Well, of course, it's on the back of income generation from Ximluci, which starts now this year and will only grow during the years to come. So it's due to that. And then also that our second biosimilar candidate, the Cimzia biosimilar candidate, is turning into profits during the course of next year, as we've concluded the scale-up and production of clinical material, and Biogen is taking over. And then that we succeed in doing a license deal for the oncology portfolio so that we can get some shared funding for the continued development.
And I'm also curious, how do you work with choosing new projects and which indications to go into?
So we have the ambition to initiate one new program annually, and that's what we have capacity for. And we're selecting on a couple of criteria. First, it's crucial to come to market by time of patent expiry. And we know it takes approximately 7 years to develop a biosimilar. So what we start now, we look 7 years ahead in time, what goes off patent then. And then we want to see sizable products, so above €1 billion of sales. And then we look at how the competitive advantage we believe we're going to have with our platform technology. And we prefer to go with products where we believe we're going to have as a strong competitive advantage as possible. But with regards to the therapeutic area, we have been and we are agnostic. We look more at the other parameters in the selection.
And if we look at biosimilars in general, how would you say that the market differs between more traditional generics and biosimilars?
It's a big difference with regards to the entry barriers and thereby also the number of biosimilars that come to market on each originator product losing its patent protection. Where in the small molecule generic world, you typically can see 10 to 15 generics coming to market short time after patent expiry and prices being pushed down 90% compared to pre-patent expiry pricing. Biosimilars, we've seen 3 to 5 biosimilars typically on each product losing patent protection, and prices typically have gone down over time to 50% below originator pricing, and that is due to the more limited competition compared to small molecules generics. And the entry barriers are technological and scientific. It requires a deeper capability with regards to development and production of this type of drugs. And then, of course, also financially speaking, since the investment going into such a development program is more significant than for small molecule generics.
I see. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
Next presenting company is Xintela with CEO Evy Lundgren Åkerlund. Welcome, Evy.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here to present an update from Xintela and also from our subsidiary Targinta. So first of all, our forward-looking statements. So Xintela is a biopharma clinical stage company. We focus on stem cell therapy and also cancer therapy through Targinta. We're today a team of about 25 people, and we're based here at Medicon Village. Founded in 2009 and already started about 10 years ago. Xintela is listed on Nasdaq First North since 2016, and since last summer, institutional investor Fler Invest is our major shareholder. Xintela develops a superior stem cell product platform named Xstem. And we have 2 projects in clinical development, in osteoarthritis and in difficult-to-heal leg ulcers. And our development of Xstem is really based on a proprietary stem cell marker, integrin alpha-10 beta-1. Xstem is patent protected for all therapeutic uses, and we have built our own GMP manufacturing facility. And we have a license since about 2 years to manufacture Xstem and other ATMPs. So Xstem consists of allogeneic, so donated mesenchymal stem cells from adipose tissue. A key step in our development in Xstem is this integrin. So we really solve a very known problem that MSC preparations from different sources contain a lot of other cells as well. In the picture here, you can see this colorful plate here demonstrating heterogeneous MSC preparations with blue cells, the MSCs, but also with other cells. So this is a common problem, has been and still is. So we solve this by using this integrin marker and antibodies to select the MSCs from the heterogeneous MSC preparation to get a homogeneous Xstem. And we have demonstrated that Xstem has several functional and regulatory advantages, like improved differentiation to other cells, increased secretion of important factors, and also improved homing to the damaged cartilage and to the damaged tissue. And importantly, consistent high quality between donors. That is also a great advantage with Xstem. Our pipeline is in the product. So Xstem can be used to treat many different diseases. And we focus on diseases with huge unmet medical need. Osteoarthritis, difficult to heal venous leg ulcers are in clinical development. We've also performed preclinical development of treating acute respiratory distress syndrome, and that will also take a step into clinical development when the time is right for that. So osteoarthritis, and there is no effective treatment today. And the lifetime risk of developing knee OA is very high. It's 46%. And globally, around 23% of all adults over 40 is estimated to have OA. Today, we have no treatments. We treat pain, inflammation, so the symptoms, and many end up with joint replacement. But one positive thing here is that our preclinical studies support disease-modifying effect of Xstem in osteoarthritis. So we believe this has a great potential to be a D-mode. So Xstem is now in clinical studies. It's the first in human phase 1 to 2A study in patients with knee OA, and this is a KL grade 2 to 3. So we treat with a single intraarticular injection of Xstem. This is a dose escalation study with 3 dose levels, 8 patients in each dose, and then we have the option to also expand up to 54 patients. We do safety and a preliminary efficacy assessment every 6 months up to 18 months. The status now is the first dose level is completed and judged safe, and the second dose level is also completed, and the safety evaluation is ongoing. And to the picture here to the right, you see the first dose level here and the second, and we're now getting ready to dose also the third group. And you can also see here that the first cohort now is getting ready for the first 6-month assessment, where we will look at different pain assessment, different walking tests, MRI, X-ray, and so on. The other clinical study we're performing is in difficult to heal venous leg ulcers. And VLU is the most common leg ulcer. And difficult to heal is when the VLUs do not heal within 6 weeks. And many patients, 4% of individuals over 65, and there is no effective treatment available. Today, mainly debridement, so the wound is cleaned, different compression dressing, and different drugs also for symptoms. We have also something believe can be positive for these patients, that XSTEM now has demonstrated excellent wound healing capacity in preclinical models. So it will be very exciting also now to see XSTEM in patients with VLU. We have started a phase 1/2a study, and this is a randomized, placebo-controlled, single-blind study with 12 patients. Here there will be a single dose administered topically, and this will be added on to standard wound care. Safety and preliminary efficacy in this study will be assessed already after 10 weeks, and then additional follow-up after 6 months. We are currently in screening and recruitment of patients. During this screening process, we have found out that this is a very difficult patient group to recruit. Many patients have difficult to heal venous leg ulcers, but the patients are elderly, and they also suffer from many other diseases and complications that many of them are excluded due to the tough excluding criteria. So remember, this is now also first of all a safety study. We have made some amendments in the protocol, and that has been accepted by MPA, and we have also even further intensified the screening of patients. So we hope this now will help, and that we soon can start dosing the first patient. We have some very exciting milestones coming up in 2023 with clinical results from the OA study, safety results from all dose levels and also early efficacy signals, clinical results also from the difficult to heal VLA study with both safety and efficacy. We also expect to have manufacturing collaboration established and also to advance the development of EQSTEM for treatment of horses. We are planning commercial deals after safety and preliminary efficacy readouts after these clinical studies phase 1/2a. So for the difficult to heal VLU study, this is expected in 2023. And remember now, safety and efficacy already after 10 weeks. And in osteoarthritis during 2024. And here we also have safety and efficacy readouts every 6 months. We also plan to partner XSTEM for clinical development and therapy of other indications, including ARDS. So then I will switch over to our subsidiary Targinta, developing first-in-class tumor-targeting antibodies. We did a very interesting discovery a few years in Xintela that our stem cell marker integrin alpha-10 is also expressed on aggressive cancer cells. And we realized that we have a very unique cancer target. We have an outstanding patent portfolio, really protecting antibody treatment targeting integrin alpha-10 and the antibody drugs. We have developed first-in-class cancer antibodies and also an ADC. And in this very, we can say, in a very exciting and growing therapeutic area. We're now in the process of preparing for phase 0 clinical studies with the goal to validate the target and the treatment concept. Our lead indications are triple-negative breast cancer and glioblastoma. These two cancer forms are very aggressive cancers with very little therapy available, and the 5-year survival for these patients is very low. We have a pipeline of first-in-class antibodies targeting integrin alpha-10 beta-1. Targ9 is an antibody-drug conjugate, an ADC, that has a toxin conjugated to the antibody. And then we have Targ9, that is a function-blocking antibody. And Targ9, our ADC, is humanized IgG1 with a cleavable linker, and attached to it is a very potent new generation payload. We have demonstrated efficient internalization of the antibody, selective killing of cancer cells expressing integrin alpha-10 beta-1, and also reduced tumor growth in cancer models. And cell line development has now been initiated. This slide shows some significant efficacy data in vivo. This is in a glioblastoma model, where we can show that one dose of Targ9 really suppress the growth of the glioblastoma tumor, which is different than compared to the control antibody and the PBS. So really strong effect of one dose of Targ9. And we could also demonstrate that body weight is not significantly affected. So this seems to be safe. Targ10, our function-blocking antibody, then also an IgG1 antibody. And in vitro, we have shown that Targ10 really suppress proliferation, migration of aggressive cancer cells, and really also reducing tumor growth of glioblastoma and triple-negative breast cancer in animal models. And the picture here to the right show suppression of tumor growth, the tumor volume here we measured with treatment with Targ10, and then in comparison with a control antibody. And we also have demonstrated inhibition of metastasis in triple-negative breast cancer models, and cell line has also been initiated with this antibody. And this picture here shows some data from a metastasis model, where we here measure the total metastasis burden after 11 weeks, where we could show that Targ10 really suppress the metastasis, and in comparison then with the control antibody. And in the picture here in the middle picture, we also can see by imaging strong reduction in lung and liver metastasis, and no effect on body weight. So we are now preparing for phase 0 clinical studies, which will be a very important value inflection point for Targinta. This will be a preclinical development, including cell line development, GLP production, and toxicology. And then to do phase 0 clinical studies, which is also called microdosing, in cancer patients with glioblastoma and triple-negative breast cancer. And in these clinical studies, we're using a very low dose, the isotope-labeled low dose of the antibodies. The goal is really to validate our unique target and treatment concept in cancer patients, and really to be able to see that the antibodies target the tumors in patients. We also aim for early partnership to accelerate the development of our therapeutic antibodies to patients. And in my last slide, I'd like to show some information in this field that Targinta is in with the ADCs. ADC is one of the hottest areas within oncology. This is due to great advancements have been made with new payloads, more potent payloads, and better chemistry, and also improved clinical outcomes have been seen, and a great surge in market approvals. And today we have 12 different ADCs approved, and with them also comes commercial success, and several have last year also shown blockbuster status. Interestingly for us is, of course, that high deal activity is also seen at earlier stage. Look there at the slide to the left. We can see several deals already in discovery, but also in the preclinical phase. An average deal value in preclinical stage during the last 5 years is $2.1 billion and upfront $52 million. With the new target and first-in-class antibodies with strong preclinical data and also a strong patent portfolio, I believe the future for Targinta and the antibody candidate is quite bright. Thank you very much.
I guess financing is your main focus right now. What can you say about that?
Yes, definitely. It is no surprise that we need additional capital to further develop our stem cell program and cancer program. So we evaluate different financing solutions for both Xintela and Targinta, either together or separately. Our situation is quite different now since our last financing round last summer. Now we have a very strong life science anchor investor board in Fleri Invest with strong interest in both Xintela and Targinta, both in the short run and in the long run. So I'm really confident that we will find good financing solutions for both companies.
And what are your plans in the veterinary medicine project this year?
Well, we have quite recently, we can say, reactivated the EQ-STEM program. An important part of that is that we have a new project leader on board, and she will, together with a team at Xintela, now plan for further development of EQ-STEM to be an important treatment for horses.
And where do you see Xintela in 2 years?
In 2 years' time, I can see that we have partners on board for further clinical development and commercialization of XSTEM for both venous leg ulcers and osteoarthritis, and that we also have partners for developing XSTEM for additional indications. For Targinta, 2 years from now, we should, that about the time when the phase 0 study should be completed. And with positive data from the phase 0 studies, I can see that we have very exciting discussions ongoing with partners for further development of our antibody candidates to patients.
We look forward to hear more about that, and thank you, Evy, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Anders Weiland, CEO at Chordate Medical. Welcome.
Thank you, Nicholina. For those who hasn't followed the company before, I will do a little bit of repeat. That could be good to know, some aspects of the company that is necessary to understand this company. The headlines for this short presentation today, I will go through the clinical study on chronic migraine, which is a pivotal study for us that was concluded in August, also presented at the Congress in London in September. Mostly, I will spend time on our focus markets and the building of proof of concept in our exit building. And we'll touch a little bit on the recently concluded rights issue that brought us capital for the next part of our strategic plan. But a little bit of repeat again. What is migraine? It could be good to know a little bit of the lay of the land here. It's basically so that anyone can have migraine. And a lot of people have had or has migraine as we speak. It comes and goes through adult life and actually early on also in childhood and adolescent years. Approximately 15% would have migraine in the episodic category, which is rare to often, basically. The part that we are focusing most on is the chronic migraine group. And you are defined as a chronic migrainer if you have more than 15 days of headache per month, whereof 8 consist of migraine episodes or migraine attacks. So it's a widespread condition and it hits a lot of people in various types and forms. So how many would that be? Well, 15% in average on any population has some sort of migraine. It's twice as common or more amongst women than amongst men. And when we talk about the chronic migraine group, it's around 2% in any given population. And that would be 150, 160 million people in the world that has chronic migraine. The normal treatment is common drugs like painkillers to deal with the headache in the acute phase. When that doesn't help anymore, there are more progressive specialized medications that can be administered, up to very specialized migraine drugs that are quite costly. And cost is something that is very pronounced in the migraine segment. An average Swedish chronic migrainer would cost 12,000 euros. Sometimes that goes up to a lot more. 80% of that is productivity loss because you can't function in school or at your work and you are away for a day or two. And about 20% is drugs or healthcare in general. So it's a very, very costly condition for the society, therefore an important matter. So what we do at Chordate as a strategy is that we're following a relatively simple exit strategy. This company is built to be sold. And we do that based on 3 pillars. One is the scientific evidence, which is important in order to succeed with an exit. All that is based on the R&D and the development that has taken place in the company early on, the technology that we base everything on. And that has generated patents. We have a patent portfolio that is quite impressive. Over 70 patents and 3 applications still running in 24 countries in the world, grouped in 9 different families. That is also important in order to be successful in an exit. What we're mostly focusing on now is the building of the proof of concept in market. That means that we like to be able to show market shares that we have generated through sales activities. And I will talk a little bit more about that specifically this time. But let's first start a little bit with the evidence base, one of the important pillars in our little exit temple. This is the pipeline you see here. We have just concluded, as I said, the PM007, a pivotal chronic migraine study on 136 patients in 9 clinics in Finland and Germany. This generated a subgroup analysis that was possible to present at the Congress in London in September. And since then, we have received the full data, and the full data actually confirms and supports the subgroup data. And this subgroup analysis was actually significant on the statistical side already as a subgroup analysis, which was a great surprise to us. If we skip the ongoing rhinitis study for this session and focus on the 009 and 010, these are 2 supportive, market-supportive studies that we're conducting right now. They're about to start. 009 is specifically interesting as that is focused on those patients that do not show response on the so-called CGRP inhibitor or antagonist treatment. CGRP treatment is the latest and greatest and the most expensive drug alternative there is, and therefore the reimbursement is very difficult to get. So these are high-profile patients, and they've been through everything else that there is in order to have access to the CGRP therapy. And about 30 to 40% of those come out on the other end with no results, so they don't respond to that treatment. And we are focusing on that group to see if we somehow can have show some effect with the Chordate treatment, the cost treatment. If we do, that will be a smashing success. If we don't, that only means that we are as good as the CGRP treatment. So this is very, very interesting for us. The 010 study is a so-called post-market surveillance study, which is something we have to do in the regulatory commitment we have, but it's also going to give us a lot of real clinic data, which will be good and folded into our routine and what we recommend for a regime for treating patients with the COS treatment. So that's a little bit about the pipeline, and the study 007, as I said, was presented in London with a German group, the German clinics as authors, because the subgroup was on the German patients group only. They finished a little early, so we could actually do a subgroup analysis. Came out fantastically, and the results here are stunning. On the left side, you see the effect or the efficacy. The upper line there with the triangles is the placebo group or the sham treatment group, and the black dots on the lower line is the active group. And as you can see, the differentiation between the placebo treatment and the active treatment is very good. It's also significant, both on the 6 weeks mark, which was the primary endpoint, and 4 weeks later on the 10 weeks mark, which was the follow-up period. The result, as you see in difference between placebo and active group on the right graph here, is actually increasing to become even better when you get over to the follow-up. So in average, and the difference between the two, almost 3 days of headache saved out of the 15 that you should have when you came in average. So this is stunning, and already, as I said, on a subgroup analysis. When we talk about response, responder here is a patient that show more than 30% reduction of headache days. We have a 40% response in the active group, and in this case, 15% response in the sham group or placebo group. That difference is significant, and it's very, very large. It is to be suspected here, though, that that sham group is rather low compared to other studies of the same sort. And I can also reveal that that improved sort of in the final results. Both these groups elevated relatively much in the final results. So we have the same difference approximately, but on a higher level for both these pillars. So we are extremely happy with this study. It is all the support we need for our future work here. So we can conclude that what's shown here in the subgroup analysis, treatment effect is good or better, response as good or better, or side effects profile, we don't even have one, and it's not medication. So this is a welcome addition to existing treatments in the portfolio that they can offer the patient. So let's now move over to focus markets here. And we talk about focus markets because we do this in a sort of maybe odd way. We have selected a few markets where we have, for some various reasons, have a possibility to succeed. It's Finland, it's UK, it's Germany, it's Italy, it's Israel and Saudi Arabia. And as you can see here on the left side, there's quite a few chronic migraine patients in all these countries and quite a lot of clinics that we can address. These are clinics that we believe are accessible for us, one shape or the other. It's not the total number of clinics, and if you sum this up, you basically get approximately 5 million patients with chronic migraine that we can have as a addressable market in over 500 clinics. Now the healthcare systems and reimbursement structures and everything basically differs between all these different markets, but collectively they serve as a very good reflection on our ability to sell. Therefore, it's a good mix for proof of concept building. In addition, it will also generate sales eventually, which is good for us, and we will probably earn money on that eventually. But the importance for us is to build and demonstrate that we can penetrate these markets, be them small or large, but we can show that we can get through and generate a platform. And we organize that with the help of part-time consultants in most of these markets that work specifically for us and very focused on a few assignments that they all have in common. They approach the key opinion leaders and early adopters and work on them, try to build early sales, try to create networks in the market that can sort of generate more. Also work on early reimbursement options, that there are such options that you can use for early technology or new technology. They manage congresses and symposiums regionally and locally, which is very difficult for us from Sweden to do because we don't have the understanding of the local market or culture. They also deal with regulatory authorities and other things that's necessary for us. And finally, at the end, perhaps we're going to lift that over to distribution. But that's a later stage. So that was the markets, and we did, as I guess many of you noted, successfully concluded a rights issue here in the beginning of the year. It brought us 37 million Swedish crowns, which is extremely good. We were offering 51 million Swedish crowns, so 73% subscription, basically. But in the current market, in the current environment in the stock market, this is to be deemed as a very good result for us. This is thanks to all our shareholders, large and small, fantastic support, for which I'm extremely grateful. So this makes us capable of moving on with our plan. A plan that we will, of course, have to adjust as we didn't reach 100% of what we were asking for, but in this condition, it's fantastic, basically. So finally, strategy going forward for this year. The proof of concept building is the most important. The deliverance of the scientific evidence that we have left is extremely important. And we will also continue the projects we have ongoing in both China and US for regulatory market access so that we can register product and get going in these markets also. So that actually concludes what I wanted to say today.
And I'm curious, you mentioned that you are active in several markets, but how did you choose which markets to enter?
It's opportunistic, basically, where we have reasons to believe that we can actually get some results early. It's sometimes it's a matter of finding the right people to work for us that we know can produce. Italy is maybe the exception. That's the only place where we have a direct distributor. We also work with distributors in Saudi Arabia, but that is due to the market structure there. It's necessary to do that. But in Italy, we have a distributor that basically works as a market access builder. They have a broader understanding of how they should create the market. But and they are more advanced in this. They started early with us. The idea with market access consultants is something we wanted to try for a long time. Now we have basically our own people on the ground doing exactly what we want them to do, albeit on part-time, but it's much more effective, actually. So we picked markets where we think we can have a nice mix of different types of healthcare systems, private versus public, different types of reimbursement systems, also private, public, charity, a lot out-of-pocket pay, which is another way of paying for healthcare, as a matter of fact. So we have a palette now of various types of markets, which is basically how we build the proof of concept. To be able to say that, well, doesn't really matter how the market is designed. We have still been able to generate these market shares.
I see. And you also mentioned US and China. What's the plan going forward there?
Well, China is a joint venture with a company in Shanghai. It's rhinitis only for now, and when we now it's submitted, the application for product registration is submitted. If and when that becomes approved, then the joint venture company will go ahead and start marketing. It's really all in their court. We do not really mix in on that. It said from beginning when we started this journey that this is all going to be Chinese decisions. So we're not involved in it. US, for now, we don't have any plans to enter the market in the US, but we do have plans to conclude the regulatory reports so that we can get product approval in the US by FDA. In order to have it ready, because we think, given the time it takes to do that, we think that's a good thing to add to the value in our exit proposition to whoever is going to buy the company.
I see. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Then I'm very happy to welcome Aqilion CEO Sara Fredriksson to the studio. Sara will give us a little bit of an insight into the recent deal with Merck. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much.
So why do you think that Aqilion and Merck make such a good fit?
So from Aqilion's perspective, I believe that our choice of target this time, an innovative approach to this novel target, we need to find a partner that could actually develop that into clinic. And Merck in this case, on the hand, is a pharma company that has the abilities to do so.
And I was just curious about the fact that Aqilion is not a listed company. Was that relevant in any way in this deal process?
No, I don't think so. Perhaps it's a little bit easier when you're not a listed company. But otherwise, no, I don't think it made a difference.
That's a very good and clear answer. So what does the deal mean for Aqilion?
Oh, it means a lot to us. I think the first thing I can think of is that we actually made a decision 3 years ago to become a biotech with our own pipeline and actually focus on drug discovery and find those targets that are really interesting within autoimmune diseases or autoinflammation. And this is kind of the first receipt that we actually did well. Someone else believed in this asset, and I think that means the most to us.
Why did you make that decision 3 years ago?
Well, we started with the team. What can we as a team do together? And we early on realized that within the inflammation space, chronic inflammation space, there is still a lot of room for innovation. And the team members could relate to that, had been working in the area before. And for the discovery part, it was that we think a small biotech needs to come with innovation to the table to be able to take a position in the value chain when you develop a project from early on and moving up in the value chain towards clinical trials and then to the patients. So I think that was the bold part, to say, let's start. We are going to find and identify novel targets and make new discoveries and put some innovation into that to get valuable assets as a small biotech.
So this is the outcome of a long-term strategy?
Yeah, it took some time before we landed in this strategy, of course. But now we have been working with a clear goal for almost 3.5 years, almost 4 years with this strategy, and continue to build team and knowledge around this core idea, so to say.
So would you say that's one of the key factors that enabled you to achieve this deal?
Yeah, I think so. The focus, the Alnitac program, which is the one that we made a deal with Merck, it's not the only one. So we had to try several ones. And we have to be really consistent that the ones that suddenly or rather quick, they can grow big. And there could be a lot of research left to do. Then it's probably out of scope for Aqilion. Or if to find the right molecules or the right set of molecules, if that is extremely difficult, it's also out of the scope for a small biotech. It becomes too expensive. So having a clear focus and follow that through is one of the key factors, I think. But the team skills is absolutely the number one.
Yeah, because of course all CEOs talk about their team being fantastic, because that's what you do, of course. But what does your team have, you think, that really is so special?
They have experience, of course. And I think you need experience of sitting both and being innovative in a lab and perhaps sitting on the other side, in the big pharma side, looking for new possible collaborations, new innovation. And if you have done both and realize that that is tricky, and choosing the right target is really, really difficult. And you have to have some kind of luck as well, I guess. So that experience of being on both sides of that table in combination with scientific skills and above all curiosity, and they really live and breathe drug development. I'm so impressed. So, yeah.
Because I can imagine it must be quite tough to let some molecule go or some projects to say, okay, no, this is too complicated, this is too expensive.
It's easy to say when you start. Then you start to love the project. And then you have to say, no, we can't do this anymore. It's always difficult. It's never an easy decision. But we promised each other when we started in this team that is one of the keys to realize how much funds do we have. If we have to bet on one of these 4 or 5, which one can we as a team progress, giving the amount of funds we have to be able to deliver something that can move on with a partner, or that we can then raise more capital to run on our own. And yeah, there's a lot of factors. But to say, no, let's put it down, that's the hardest thing to do.
What happens with those projects that you put to one side?
We remember them. And as science progresses, sometimes there is something new in the scientific literature that makes us realize, this is the way we should have approached it. And then, of course, you can look at it again. But to keep the focus in the team, you have to say, well, we stop this and we don't do anything more for now. Sometimes I think it's good that it stays there, and someone else will probably pick it up when it's time.
So, of course, it's immensely satisfying that you picked the right project then.
Yeah, one could say so. If we made that choice early on, and we were lucky to make the right one this time.
Did you know? I mean, you must have had a feeling then that this is the one.
Yeah.
Even if you put costs and everything to one side.
I think there is another way we work, and I didn't mention that before, but business development has been a key, at least to me when I started to join the team. And by making sure that the asset you develop is of interest to others, and listen to what they ask you and what they like to see the next time you meet them, then you kind of get a little bit sense of, this is interesting, this is something that someone wants to know more about. And of course, I think that is extremely important. No matter what kind of business you have to know that the one that is going to buy your product, project, whatever, is there to actually do so when you're ready.
So you're always considering it from 2 angles, from the buyer and from the scientific.
Yeah, I think so. The scientific part, of course, but also the business development part. And those two has to kind of go in the right, work with each other very closely. And that is something we do on a daily basis.
And then, of course, Merck was interested. And I realize this sounds a bit like a gossipy question, but how did you meet? How was the first contact with Merck? Was it a conference? How does it work?
So we met, as I think a lot of different biotech and pharma companies actually do. We met in partnering conferences, and we met a lot of different companies, and Merck was one of them. So that is also a conscious decision that as soon as you can start to talk about your program, of course, sometimes you can't because you don't want to reveal things, it's too soon, but as soon as you can, then I think it's a good idea to get out there and see if you can gather some interest and understand what is it that we have to deliver to get the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting. Yeah.
Because that's what happens from the first contact. It's a series of meetings.
It's a series of meetings, yes.
With maybe several interested parties then, and then it whittles down to...
Yeah, the way we work, we try to meet several parties. I think you should. There are all different type of questions you can gather, and companies have different strategies moving forward. Even Big Pharma has their own strategies. So it's extremely important to meet different type of, both biotech and Big Pharma, I think, and continue that dialogue with more than one party.
And what is negotiating with Big Pharma like? I'm going to assume it's a long process.
I would say it is, but it's important. I mean, if you want to, this is a very early stage asset we worked with this time, and we will have to rely on each other, no matter if it's a big pharma or a small biotech, that we can move these assets and make both parties winners in one way or another, even if it looks completely different from the different party, what winning is, of course. But that is the most important thing, and then you can't rush things. It takes time to understand each other, to build confidence, and to understand that you're moving towards this, in the same direction.
Yeah, because I assume you have a clear idea of the value of your asset, and then in the end, I suppose it's a compromise.
Yeah, I think all deal making is a compromise, but there is more to deal making than the actual value, I think, because this is a long-term project if we are all successful, and you have to think the whole way through. And then there is a lot of other factors than the actual financials, perhaps, that is extremely important.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be a long-lasting relationship.
Yes, and it's supposed to be, I mean, what we agree upon. If you have a conversation or if it's deal making, what you agree upon is something you should be able to deliver upon all the way through. And that's why it's so important, I think, to take the time you need.
So what happens next in this collaboration?
So this is a license and collaboration deal. So we will collaborate with the team, Merck team, and continue to develop the asset, the molecules. And we are really looking forward to that. And this is the next stage for us, of course. So it's about both giving and getting to know new things, I hope, that can strengthen our pipeline moving forward.
So going forward then, what will Aqilion's involvement, if we're talking practical terms, look like?
So in the collaboration moving forward, it's already started, of course, and we enjoy the collaboration. And our responsibility will mainly be the medicinal chemistry and continue with the work of the molecule series we already started.
So that's the first deal done, but I guess there is no resting on your laurels for you. So what is next for Aqilion?
So we will continue with novel projects. We have a few already up and running, not public yet, but we work exactly the same as we did when we started the Alnatac program. And then we have our project or program Regulus, which is a JAK1 inhibitor, and it's entering it's in phase 1 now, and we will continue and design the phase 2 study in eosinophilic esophagitis. So that is the next step for us.
So hopefully we will have you back here to talk about the next big deal for Aqilion.
Oh, I hope so. That would be really nice.
But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Marcus Bosson, CEO at QuiaPEG Pharmaceuticals. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Marcus Bosson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of QuiaPEG Pharmaceuticals. It's a biotech company located in Uppsala. Our main asset is Unicleaver. It's a drug delivery platform aimed at increasing the half-life of pharmaceutical ingredients. And this platform is suitable for small molecules, peptides, and proteins. And what is key here is that it's a releasable linker chemistry. And this has reached a broad protection, intellectual property rights in the United States, Europe, and actually last year also in Japan. We have built up through years a pipeline of two very interesting projects. One is a QuiaPEG 1030. It's a pegylated version of teduglutide for short bowel syndrome. It's an orphan drug indication. And QuiaPEG 1029, which is a pegylated version of liraglutide aimed at type 2 diabetes and obesity. Our main asset is Unicleaver. It's releasable pegylation. Here we see the key qualities of a Unicleaver platform. It's universal, it's released either by enzymes or pH. All humans have the same pH in the body. It's 7.4, so hence we don't need to adopt to any different pH. It's effective. It will be a complete release from the drug, original drug. So that will be intact once released. It's versatile also. We can modify this linker chemistry, so we have a release ranging from hours up to weeks, which translates into maybe going from once daily to once weekly or even once monthly. This means fewer doses. It's of course better for the patients, and also it will lower the cost to society. If you look at the slide down below, you can see Unicleaver marked in the middle, and on the left you have a PEG, it's polyethylene glycol, and on the right you have a drug. And what's the purpose of a PEG? Well, that is needed also for the half-life extension. The current medications, which are pegylated, are permanently linked to the drug. And that means, of course, a longer half-life, but it also takes away some, or in many times, most of the biological effect of the drug. Releasable pegylation, which Unicleaver is all about, solves that problem. So Unicleaver provides release, so you get longer half-life, but you get a biological activity in full for the drug, which is released, as you can see to the right on the slide. So this is for a lot of peptide developments, new peptides. They tend to have low half-life, and Unicleaver definitely could be a very good solution to that problem. It's also possible to create new improved versions of already existing drugs. That's called life cycle management. So many companies, maybe they have a blockbuster peptide and they would like to extend the patent protection and offer the market a kind of new approach. That could be going from once daily to once weekly. In that case, Unicleaver could be a very good solution. I said permanent pegylation is quite common, which is very good for us because that means PEG is really solid on the market. And PEG is just something we buy from a shelf using, but Unicleaver is unique. And if we look at the competitors here, we have Arcede Pharma, which is a Danish biotech company listed on NASDAQ and has a market cap of about $6 billion. They have human growth hormone going from once daily to once weekly. Quite successful, it's on the market now. And you have a few other companies, and one of them actually was acquired a year ago for about 1 billion plus from Sanofi. So the market is quite small, and so we have definitely a good niche and opportunity for business development and maybe also potentially to be acquired of a company. And briefly about the patent estate. The patent estate is very important. That's the first thing next to the biological data, of course. If those looks good, then the next step is due diligence in the patent estate. And I'm proud to say that we have now built up over the years quite strong patent estate. We have allowed or issued patents in Japan, European Union and United States. So let me go over to one of the projects which we focus our efforts on right now. It's teduglutide. It's a so-called GLP-2 analog. It was approved in 2012 for the treatment of short bowel syndrome. In Swedish, it's tunntarmen. It's an orphan drug indication, and either you are born with some faulty short bowel or because of disease, they have to remove parts or the whole of it. So then you need Gattex. It's administered daily injections, and it's a very cumbersome process. Many patients, they need actually a nurse to administer it every day. So you can imagine if we could get from once daily to once weekly, that would be a big relief for the patients. It's really a large unmet medical need, and those out there are glepaglutide. It's a Danish company, but that will be twice weekly. Apraglutide, which I would say is the main competition. It's once weekly administration. It's a Swiss company called Arcede Bio. And the global market is expected to reach about $2 billion by 2030. Here are some data. It's really a true prodrug. And what do we mean by prodrug? Well, it means when, if you remember one of the first slides, you have a PEG, you have a unicleaver, you have a drug, and you connect that to one unit. And then if it's biologically intact in the bloodstream at that point, then it's a prodrug. So it doesn't release anything or does anything to the body. But then, slowly, gradually, and in a controlled way, the pH will cleave systematically and release the drug, and then it will retain the full biological activity. And as you can see from this slide, we can see that teduglutide, it has an effect immediately, and it goes down, and you can see 1030 actually is not biological active, which is what we want to see. We have also done a proof of concept study, a small intestine weight. So this is really hard facts. It's not biomarkers or anything like that. We take out from the rats the small intestine and see the weight growth. So in this study in rats, we used teduglutide, which is Gattex. We used our 1030, and we compared to our main competitor, apraglutide. And as you can see, we are significantly better than teduglutide, and we are as good as the main competitor, apraglutide. In this slide, it looks a little bit like we are slightly better, but this is hard facts. And the bottom line is that we can see the slow release, we can see a much longer elimination of half-life compared to teduglutide. We have a 5 times increased exposure compared to other doses of teduglutide. And this proof of concept study, which is commonly accepted as the proof of concept in preclinical studies, so we could see good growth in weight and for 1030. So this is compatible with weekly dosing intervals. The market potential, briefly, this reflects the fact that it's very cumbersome to administer, often by a nurse. And you can see in the beginning, 100% of the patients are happy, but then after a while they say, oh, this is too cumbersome, this is really, so they quit the treatment, and that's a really big problem. And today, Gattex, even though it's very cumbersome, has a sale of about $750 million. So if someone like us could come up with a drug which is good biological effect and it's once weekly, definitely there is a room for improvement and a large unmet medical need. So according to some calculations, this market for short bowel syndrome and the treatment will increase, and also you can probably look at other indication than SBS also. But if you elaborate and imagine you get about 20% of the SBS patients in US, Europe and Japan, and over the years, and you have approximately the same price level as the current treatment, then you reach a revenue peak at $2 billion. So it's definitely a blockbuster potential for 1030. And the competitive landscape, I mentioned Takeda. They have this Gattex, which is already on the market once daily. Then we have our competitor, Vectiv Bio, praglutide. It has a market cap of about $500 million. It's once weekly. It's supposed to be for once weekly. However, it's a novel peptide and has a limited clinical record. It's now in phase 3. But 1030, we can benefit from teduglutide and its publications and what's public about the filing. So that means we could probably use Section 505(b)(2) when we would like to file at the appropriate authorities. And that would also save us time and money. Xintela Pharma, Danish company, they have tried to develop glepaglutide for once weekly, but as far as we understand, it's maybe it will be bi-weekly. We will see. And the 9meters Biopharma, it's a GLP-1 actually, so it's not a GLP-2. So it's very different from our approach. And a little bit about the other project. It's 1029, pegylated liraglutide. So we go from orphan drug indication to a much bigger indication, type 2 diabetes and obesity. And obesity is really a big thing right now, and everyone is talking about semaglutide, which is taken once weekly for obesity. And this could actually be a competitor if it's successful with semaglutide for once weekly administration. We have seen proof of concept in rats. We have a slow release profile in mini pigs. And this leads up to hopefully once weekly administration. And we have also been granted a patent which expires 2038. So as I mentioned under the other one, this is already approved drug, liraglutide. So even also here, we can probably draw on the file under Section 505(b)(2). So the take-home message here for QuiaPEG, I would say it's a very unique drug delivery platform with a releasable mechanism. And that's the key word here, releasable. So there are other platforms, but this is releasable. So you connect PEG, Unicleaver, the drug, and altogether it's inactive, but then in a controlled way, slowly, you get the release of an active drug, and it becomes biologically active and does its job. So that means we can go from once daily to once weekly, or even once monthly. So that's a huge potential, and it's also very desirable. And we have 2 preclinical projects with blockbuster potential. And the patents are key in our future success. And I think we have a very strong patent estate. We've granted patent European Union, US, Japan. That's the most important market. Right now, we are focusing on business development and licensing deals, R&D collaborations. I would also end this presentation by saying that this could be also quite good potential acquisition target for big pharma looking for half-life extension technologies, which they could play around with in multiple fields, small molecules, peptides, proteins. My final slide here, we have an upcoming rights issue now in March. It will commence the subscription period, March 15. And the issue size is about 20 million Swedish. It's a unit, so it's 1 share, and then you get 2 warrants for free. One, which is in September this year, and the other one is in April next year. And the subscription price is 2 euro per unit, and it's 100% guaranteed, this upcoming rights issue. So I think I leave it there.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And the main takeaway is that patients will only have to take their medicine once a week instead of once a day, thanks to that technology. Could you elaborate a bit on what you think, how will this affect patients in general?
Well, in general, for the short bowel syndrome patients, our goal is, of course, not only take it from once daily to once weekly, but also develop it into an auto-injector, so it could be really simple to administer. And just do it like people with diabetes, they have an auto-injector. And that would be really convenient, because today, as I mentioned, most patients need a nurse coming home to their home and administer it. And it's a very cumbersome process, so 7-8 steps before you inject it. So if we could develop it into an auto-injector, but if we could not, once a weekly is good enough.
And if we look a bit at the competition, you're not completely alone in this area.
No.
For example, we have Vecti Bio, who's a bit ahead of you here.
Yeah.
What do you think about the competition?
Competition is always good. It shows that it's of great interest. And the main competitor, as we see it, is this Vecti Bio, the $500 million market cap company. And they are in phase 3. So we can learn a lot from their clinical trials, and we have also access to apraglutide, which is the name of a drug. So that's why we could compare it straight on with apraglutide, which is very good for us. But we have a bio-better, so we have another shorter version of filing an application called Section 505(b)(2), whereas Vecti Bio has a completely new peptide, so they need to go the full extent. So maybe we need less patients in fewer studies to show the same and reach the market. But yes, they are ahead of us. And but this is a large market, and you always have room for more than one. Take painkillers, Alvedon, Xbrane. You have a multiple, even though it's a big market. Or in diabetes, every drug has a certain difference compared to each other. So definitely there is room for improvement and room for more than one. So I don't see that as a problem.
I see. And last year you signed a letter of intent with a Chinese corporation. Could you tell us a bit about what that deal looks like?
Yeah, so we have been in discussions and we signed that letter of intent. So the purpose is for them to, they are developing a biosimilar version of teduglutide. So the whole thing is to partner with someone, and they would do the conjugation. We would deliver the linker, they would do the conjugation. They have already invested into the development of teduglutide. So they have an option also to get a license for China. We will most likely retain the rights for Europe and elsewhere in the world. So it's a little bit of a win-win situation, and where we could forward this project, moving it forward with the help of someone who is also already in the biosimilar market.
I see. And let's end with talking about the rights issue that's coming up.
Yeah.
Why should one invest?
I think we are at an interesting crossroad. We have two very good preclinical projects with great potential for out-licensing. We have the Unicleaver platform, which is available for out-licensing, and you can slice that platform either for a license for a certain indication or a license for a certain drug. And thirdly, because thanks to that we have built up quite good, I would say very good, patent estate. We've granted patents in European Union, US and Japan. I think after a due diligence, any major company who would like to get into this half-life extension technology, they will see it's very good, and that we are certainly a potential acquisition target for another company.
I see. It will be interesting to follow.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Pernilla Sandvall, CEO at WntResearch. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to present the company and FOXY5, our drug candidate preventing the metastatic process. And who am I to speak about this? I have been the CEO for WntResearch now since May. My background is that I'm a pharmacist from Uppsala University, and I have been with Merck & Company, a big pharmaceutical company, for more than 20 years doing clinical research, and then for 10 years with a very small company, Index Pharmaceutical, as the COO. We are listed on Spotlight, and therefore this is our disclaimer. The investment highlights and the key messages I want to reveal today are those. So FOXY5 is a unique drug candidate. It's in clinical phase 2 development, and we are looking at colon cancer. It's preventing the cancer to spread. There is a high medical need in stage 2 and 3 colon cancer. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. There is a significant commercial opportunity here. So if we're targeting 65,000 patients globally, which is approximately 1/3 of all patients, which I think is relevant to do, this means that a yearly revenue could be more than $500 million. FOXY5 was discovered by Professor Tommy Andersson. He is at Lund University, and he is also one of the founders of the company. He has done research with the protein Wnt5a and cancer. We are an experienced organization, both when it comes to clinical development, business development, and also commercialization. I mentioned colon cancer, but this is an additional value opportunity because it's possible to also use FOXY5 in other cancer types. So those are the key messages, and I'm going to give a little further details of those as we go along. So colon cancer. Every year, more than 1 million people are getting diagnosed with colon cancer. So if a person gets the diagnosis and the cancer tumor is really local in the colon, then the 5-year overall survival is actually 71%. However, if the cancer is spread to other part of the body so that you have metastasis, the overall 5-year survival is only 14%. So preventing the metastatic process is a major unmet medical need for cancer treatments to avoid relapse and death. Oncology and cancer could be quite complex, but there are different stages in colon cancer. We're talking about stage 1 to 4, where stage 1, the cancers, it's just cancer cells and they are in the colon. And as a cancer type develop then to stage 2, 3, and 4, it progresses and grows, and when you're at stage 4, you do have metastasis, and so the cancer is in other parts of the company, and this is what we are showing in this slide. The position in the market then, so the stages are just at the bottom here, and all patients get surgery. That is what you do, remove the tumor in colon. If the patient is in stage 1, there are no further treatments, so no pharmacology treatment. However, if you're in 2, 3, and 4, there are other treatments. You have biomarkers, it's called, and a biomarker is something you can measure in the tumor that could predict if the treatment will be effective or not. So their chemotherapy, there's no biomarkers for those, and they are used for stage 2 to 4, depending on the tumor and the patient. If the patient is in stage 4, there are numerous of targeted therapies. Some have biomarkers and others have not. There are a lot of competition in oncology and in stage 4 here, so there are several candidates on the market. For stage 2 and 3 patients, though, we haven't really seen any. There is a study going on with aspirin, acetyl salicylic acid. So this study is ongoing. But otherwise, it's an opportunity for FOXY5 to treat the patients in 2 and 3 who have a risk for developing the metastasis. I would like to do the parable with a dandelion. I think most of you know that when the flower has bloomed, you see this typical seed stand, and all the seeds can be scattered with the wind, and then you can have many, many, many dendrilions. And this is a way to sort of tell you about what is the metastasis of a tumor. So from a more scientific perspective, FOXY5 mimics the Wnt5a protein and thus preventing metastasis to form. So the Wnt5a is inducing signaling events, and it leads to an increased adherence of the neighboring cells. So the cancer cells are more stuck to those cells and to the surrounding tissue. So thus it's impaired the migration and invasion of cancer cells. But Wnt5a cannot be given. It's a large protein. It cannot be given as a drug. But FOXY5, it's a smaller molecule, it's a peptide, and it mimics the Wnt5a and the signaling effects that it has. So thus it's resulting in a decreased ability of the cancer cells to move, and we call it migrate, invade, and thus metastasize. Trying to illustrate this in the pictures. So the picture in the middle or to the left, it's when a tumor has a high degree of Wnt5a expression. So thus the cancer cell stay in the tumor and is not released in the same way as in the other picture, where there is a low expression of Wnt5a. Then the cancer cells could then migrate and spread to other parts of the body, and that is metastasis to be formed. I say that we have this, so we have done studies, and prior to do clinical research, you have to do a lot of studies that is non-clinical, which means that are done in cells or animals. And we have seen that the FOXY5 really mimics what Wnt5a is doing in cells, and also then in vivo studies. And we have seen effects on metastases in the liver, in the lungs, in the lymph nodes. We also seen that the number of stem cells are affected actually in a specific model. Stem cells, one can say it's like sleeping cells. So it's very difficult to actually see anything. This has to be further explored, but it's very, very interesting. And in this model, we also could see a reduced tumor size. So all this was done prior to the clinical development. And what one also has to do before you go into patients is that you need to do toxicology studies. And that is mandated for all drug development. And we have done those. And there were no signal, no signs that we couldn't continue. We also have to have the formulation done. So you can have this brilliant molecule, but it's just impossible to get into the body. That is working on formulation and manufacturing. And those are done. So we do have a drug product as well. And then we have done phase 1 studies. And this is the first studies you do in patients, and we have done 2, and there was an excellent safety profile with this. So there were no signs of toxicity or any, and the pharmacokinetic looked good. So then we continued into this, what's called phase 2 development. So this was the original design of our phase 2 study. And I say original, and we'll come back to that in a second. So patients are diagnosed with colon cancer, and then they are what we call randomized to be in the control group or to be in the active treatment group with FOXY5. If the patient is in the FOXY5 group, the treatment starts immediately and it continues over the surgery. So as I mentioned previously, all patients have surgery. So after 3 weeks approximately, most patients have their surgery. The treatment continues until chemotherapy starts, and then we follow the patients up to 2 years after the surgery. So for a patient, they are in the study approximately 2 years and 2-3 months, something like that. It's quite a long time. What we could reveal during the fall was that we have unexpected observation in 110 patients, and those are ad hoc observations. We could see a change in the tumor when it comes to TNA staging, and also how the tumor had spread along nerves and vessels. And those are observations, they are substantial. 110 patients is quite some. And to see it after 3 weeks of treatment, that was unexpected. In animal, you can see things fast, but not actually in humans. We didn't expect this. And this demonstrates that there is a biologic effect of FOXY5 in man, and we had never seen that before. So this is a picture of Professor Andersson, and he's of course very happy, but also this is very interesting data. So we are now changing the study. So this means that those ad hoc observations, they are not counted in clinical development. You have to have the measurements pre-specified. So we are now revising the study, and the measures are to happen at surgery with the parameters I just showed you. And this means that the follow-up time of 2 years will not happen. We're awaiting the protocol to be approved. So what this has done is that we have got some really good insights, and we're planning a little different the way forward for FOXY5. So we're revising the study protocol, and we expect that the approval will come during spring. So it's from the health authorities in Spain and Hungary we're doing the study. There is an opportunity then to demonstrate the effect at surgery, as opposed to this 2 years after. And thus less capital is actually needed. We did a recent rights issue that gave financing for another year. We also have the 2 option programs coming up. And then that could secure further financing for the study and other things. But it really depends how this will play out. So there is a potential now to explore other cancer therapies in collaboration with others. It could be that we look into colon cancer patients that cannot get chemotherapy, or it could be that we look at patients that have metastases already, because those metastases, they spread. That could be an opportunity, or rather maybe go to look also at other cancer types, for instance, breast or prostate. So what we're really doing now is the study. That's the main focus. We have to constantly improve the drug formulation to get to the intended market application. And that's something one has to do. Every drug candidate have to go through those. We are looking then into other cancer form, AML we have talked about, and this metastatic colon cancer potentially. And we are looking at patent and continue the business development, interactions with key opinion leaders and regulatory authorities. And last but not the last, we are looking into finding a partner. This is key for us now to collaborate the development of FOXY5. And this is the team. We are experienced, and we have experience from clinical development, commercialization, and business development. And those are our scientific advisors. So I really hope that our research could yield these seeds in the dandelion to stay, so that the tumor will not spread. We're not preventing it to happen, but we're preventing it to spread. And those were the highlights that I initially said. It's a unique candidate, and we're focusing on colon cancer, but there are other opportunities. And this is me, if you would like to reach out. Thank you for all.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And as you mentioned, you completed a rights issue with good results. Could you tell us a bit more about what this means for the company going forward?
Well, it meant a lot. To go out with a rights issue at the end of last year was of course not the timing that anyone would like. I mean, we are post-pandemic, and there is a war going on in Ukraine, but we had to do it. And I really say thank you to all our investors, because the rights issue, we had a coverage of 76%, and I've seen the statistics from last year. It wasn't as good at all, so I'm really happy, and it means a lot.
And you also have a subscription period coming up for warrants. Would you like to give us your best arguments for why one should subscribe to this?
Absolutely. I think what you have heard today, we now know that FOXY5 is doing something in man. This was the first time that we saw like a proof of efficacy, that there is something biologic that this compound is doing. So the project has a de-risked by this, I would say.
I see. And if we end by looking forward, what can we expect from WNT this coming period?
Well, in the short period, we have been invited, and that's actually taking place tomorrow, by a research group in Heidelberg. There are 60 researchers, I should say, that only focus on WNT signaling. not only Wnt5A, there's a lot of proteins, but Wnt5A is of course one. And we were invited to speak at this workshop, so I'm really looking forward to that. That's more the scientific path, and then we're invited to speak at the Swiss Nordic Bio that taking place at the end of March. And of course, I think the most that we are eager to looking at is to see the approval of the amendment.
I see. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Arcede Pharma, and here to present the company is CEO Mia Lundblad. Welcome, Mia. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So the next 15 minutes, I'm going to introduce you to Arcede Pharma. I will also give you a background to the disease, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, that we aim to treat, and also give you an introduction and background to our drug candidate, RCD 405. So starting with the vision of Arcede Pharma. We aim to provide treatments for patients with chronic obstructive airway diseases, and with the aim to obtain fewer and less severe symptoms, but also improve the quality of the lives for these patients and prolong their survival. And this is actually in line with the UN Agenda 2030, where one of the specific goals is to decrease the number of deaths related to non-transmittable diseases. The company and the management team consists of a group of people with a long and solid experience within drug development, all the way from preclinical research until clinical development and to market access. Of importance to note is also that the company has been listed on the Spotlight stock market since June last year, and together with the main founder, the management team owns about 16% of the shares. So over to the actual disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease that we aim to treat. And that is a disease that causes a lot of suffering for the patients. Most of the symptoms are shown on this picture here, and the main and important ones being a chest tightness, a hypersecretion of mucus, a constant cough, and also difficulties breathing and getting air, called dyspnea. It's also important to note and understand that COPD is actually caused by a constant inflammation, and that inflammation, it's also leading to a progressiveness of the disease. The inflammation itself usually causes exacerbation, which are acute worsening of the symptoms of in these patients. And these exacerbations can cause and lead to hospitalizations and in the end also death. Also from the society, COPD causes a high burden. Looking at globally, actually more than 3 million people die of this disease yearly. And actually it's the third leading cause of death worldwide. From a productivity point of view and activity point of view for these patients, it's also quite a burden. Looking at some numbers, in 2019, the 212 million prevalent cases accounted for about 74 million dailies, and one daily being equivalent to the loss of 1 year of complete health. So you can see only in 1 year, the prevalent cases of COPD, they lost more than 74 million years of complete health. In addition, these patients suffer from a lot of comorbidities, the main ones being associated with cardiovascular diseases and heart diseases, but also depression is a common disease among these patients. The costs associated with COPD are also very high. The healthcare budget only in the EU for 1 year amounts to about 40 billion euros, and the same amount is prevalent for the US only. And what are then the main factors that drive these costs? Seen in this graph below, it's actually obvious that it's the hospitalizations. And as I said before, hospitalizations are due to the exacerbations and the high inflammation level. And they, in the end, also usually then cause the death of these patients. So it's really important to be able to target the underlying inflammation causing the exacerbations and in the end these hospitalizations, not only on a patient level but also from an economic perspective. So what are then the current treatment options and the available and recommended drugs? You can divide them into mainly two different groups. The bronchodilators that have an effect on the underlying and the airflow limitations, and then the inhaled corticosteroids, which dampen the inflammation. But none of these drugs really have an effect on the underlying disease, and they don't have an effect on the decline in lung function. Many of those drugs also have a decreased effect over time, and they are associated with safety concerns. Looking at some numbers, about 50% of the patients, even though they are adequately treated, still experience symptoms, and about 30, even up to 40% remain and still have exacerbations. So there is really a need for different mode of action drugs that actually target the underlying disease mechanism. And here, RCD 405, our drug candidate, offers a good potential new drug alternative. It has a new mode of action and a unique mode of action. We have also documented actually that it has both an anti-inflammatory effect as well as a bronchodilating effect. And it targets several of these underlying causes that are involved in COPD. So by that, we can see has the potential of affecting several of these symptoms involved in COPD. And these effects we have demonstrated before in vitro and ex vivo studies. Now we have also been able to confirm them in vivo studies in animals. So starting with the airway relaxation, we have used a mice model, an airway hyperreactivity mice model, where we induced bronchoconstriction or airway constriction with the help of methacholine, a potent bronchoconstrictor. And when then adding our drug, RCD 405, we saw a clear relaxation of the airways. And this is demonstrated in this graph by the difference between the red line, where no drug was given, and the blue line in both graphs, where RCD 405 was given. And this is obvious and also shown in both the lungs, which is the graph to the left, and the central airways, which is the graph to the right. Furthermore, we have also seen this anti-inflammatory effect. We have shown it previously in vitro studies, and now again we have confirmed it in vivo studies in mice. After inducing an inflammation response and then adding our drug or dosing with our drug, RCD 405, there was a clear reduction of many of these pro-inflammatory cytokines involved in the inflammation. These data here on this graph also shows the immune cell response, which are also an important factor in the induction of inflammation. So here you see both the important neutrophils and inflammatory macrophages, as well as the eosinophils. They are reduced. And that you can see from each graph here, from the blue bar to the left in all the three graphs, where RCD 405 was given, compared to the lighter blue graph where no drug was given. So with these very positive results, we are of course eager to continue our development with RCD 405 and get into the clinic as soon as possible. However, we need to first complete a few activities. One of them, of course, being to complete and finalize the last non-rodent tox study. We also want to continue and finalize our development together with Iconovo, and we want to further characterize some of the properties of RCD 405 in order to get a better understanding and prediction for the dose setting in the clinic. And also, we are aimed to perform a market analysis to better understand the COPD market. So with that, in summary, It has been shown here in these slides and with these numbers here that COPD is a disease with a high unmet medical need. And here we see the potential with RCD405, our drug candidate, that has this dual mechanism of action and unique mode of action, targeting not only the bronchoconstriction part, has an anti-inflammatory effect. We also see that there is a large market and commercial potential. The drug sales market already today amounts to about 20 billion euros, and this is expected to increase with about 5 to 6% per year in the coming decade. We also have a good patent protection with our compound in the major markets until 2039. And we are confident that with our current team and competences in the management team, with our consultants and also our newly engaged advisors, which are renowned in the field of COPD and asthma, that we will be able to, as efficiently and as safely as possible, get into the clinical development phase as soon as possible. So with that, I want to conclude my presentation, and thank you.
Arcede is a rather young company, not even 1 year old. How's the journey been so far?
It has been an exciting journey and a journey where I have learned a lot, but also a very positive journey during the last 8 months.
Mm-hmm. What would you say has been the most exciting thing about this journey so far?
Yeah, both that we have actually generated a lot of results, which we, of course, also aimed to do, but that we actually see the progress and the development of our project. And also with a lot of new contacts and good advisors and consultants being engaged, which has been very positive.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of which, to help you along in this journey, you've recently engaged a couple of scientific advisors. Could you tell us a little bit more about them and what their roles will be?
Yes, we have Professor Arne Egersten here from Lund University, and he is both a clinician but also a researcher and has his own research group, and they have generated some of these data that I presented before. And it's good to have this both local support, but also with both from the research side, but also with the patient contacts and the clinical in-depth knowledge, I would say. Then we have Professor Clive Page from the UK, who is a very renowned person in this area and has a lot of contacts and has been involved in many of other development projects for drug developments, and also has a very thorough knowledge in the research area of COPD and asthma and a big network of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are great assets to have, for sure.
Yes.
You mentioned in the presentation that you're finalizing the toxicology studies for RCD405. Do you have a timeline for when to expect the results for these?
Yes, the dosing will actually start here in end of April. It will then take 4 weeks, including 2 weeks recovery and analysis of results. So we expect to have at least preliminary results during the summer.
Mm-hmm. And well, finally, if you had a crystal ball and you could look into the future, when Arcede Pharma turns 2 years old, where will the company be?
Yeah, the hope is, and my vision is that we will have progressed into the clinic and also have obtained clinical results, at least with safety and hopefully also some preliminary efficacy results, so that we can prove that it has an effect and is safe also for the patients.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking forward to that two-year birthday for the company. Thank you so much, Mia, for joining us and for your presentation today.
Thank you very much.
And that marks the end of the BioStock Investor Meeting for this time. I hope you found it interesting and that you will join us for the Digital Life Science Spring Summit at the end of May. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our videos on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Goodbye.